What if I told you that success, the success that everyone wants, isn't for you, not for lack of effort, not for lack of deserving it, but simply because it's not for everyone. Period. We live in an era where success has become an obligation. We grow up hearing that all we have to do is believe, work hard, stay focused, and the universe will conspire in our favor. It's a nice, comforting speech, but false. The truth is that the world is brutal. Not everyone will win, and pretending otherwise only leads to frustration. Nietzsche, one of the most provocative philosophers in history, was never afraid to say this. For him, reality did not need to be molded to fit our expectations. It had to be faced as it is, harsh, unequal, selective. Success, for Nietzsche, was an achievement of the strong, not only physically, but mentally, spiritually, and even they often fail. But what about those who don't reach the top? Are they doomed to insignificance? This is where Stoicism comes in. If Nietzsche forces us to face the world without filters, the Stoics teach us how to live with dignity within that truth. They don't promise fame, wealth, or prominence. They promise something greater: inner peace, clarity, and emotional freedom. In this video, we'll dive into these ideas. We'll break the illusions that keep you stuck in unattainable patterns and make room for a life with more truth and inner strength. Before continuing, check if you are subscribed to the channel. This helps me to continue bringing content with depth and sincerity. Now let's start with the first myth you need to leave behind: the idea that success is for everyone. The myth of universal success. The idea that success is available to everyone is one of the biggest lies ever told, and one of the most seductive. From an early age, we are bombarded with messages that say, you can be anything you want to be. Just believe. Everyone has the same 24 hours. But is that really the case? The modern world has turned success into a product. There are formulas, gurus, manuals, and promises that anyone can reach the top. Just follow the right path. This narrative seems fair, even inspiring, but it hides something dangerous: the denial of real differences between people, contexts, limitations, and above all, human nature itself. Nietzsche saw this with brutal clarity. He did not believe in equality of fate, nor in universal promises. For him, life is inherently unequal. Strength, talent, genius, creative impulse, all of these are not equally distributed. The German philosopher did not see this as cruelty, but as an honest reflection of reality. And when we deny that reality, we hurt ourselves. This denial manifests itself silently. Ordinary people with normal routines begin to feel like failures for not living extraordinary lives. They blame themselves for not having achieved the perfect body, the successful company, the ideal relationship. On social media, comparison is constant, and frustration builds up like an invisible cloud over millions of people who deep down are just trying to live. The myth of universal success doesn't just create illusion, it creates guilt. If everyone can do it, then those who don't do it don't try hard enough, aren't disciplined enough, or have faith enough. It's a perverse game. You become the only one to blame for not winning in a system that never really offered equality of opportunity. And this is where Nietzsche rips through the veil of hypocrisy. Not everyone will win. Not everyone is destined for visible greatness. And that's okay. It's not a condemnation, it's a liberation. Because when we accept that traditional success is not a must-have, we open up space to redefine what it truly means to win. Stoicism reinforces this movement. The Stoics never spoke of success as fame, money, or recognition. For them, the only real success is self-mastery. It is living virtuously in the face of chaos. It is maintaining calm in pain, clarity in confusion, and steadfastness in failure. While Nietzsche pulls us out of our illusions, the Stoics offer us direction. They say, stop chasing what's beyond your control. Instead of seeking external validation, cultivate your inner strength. Because contrary to what you've been told, not everyone is going to be great on the outside, but anyone can be great on the inside. This is the turning point. Success is not a trophy for the privileged few, nor an obligation imposed on everyone. It is an intimate journey, an invisible construction, a continuous effort towards self-mastery. Think about it. How many people live according to goals they didn't even choose? How many chase standards created by others? How many measure themselves by expectations that were imposed, not felt? The myth of universal success fuels this insane and quietly destructive race. But now that you've begun to see behind the myth, it's time to dig deeper. Because if not everyone will win in this competitive world, then who are the ones who do? What sets them apart? Nietzsche has an answer. They have the will to power, an inner force that drives, challenges, and builds. And that's what we'll talk about in the next chapter, the will to power and the selection of the strong. If in the previous chapter we dismantled the illusion that success is accessible to everyone, now it is time to understand why some manage to reach the top, and why this is not just a question of luck or effort. Nietzsche believed that the driving force of human existence was not the pursuit of happiness, but rather the will to power, Wille zur Macht. This will is the fundamental impulse of life, a force that moves us to grow, to overcome, to conquer, to impose order on chaos. It is a vital energy that inhabits some more intensely than others. Unlike the romanticized view of equality of abilities, Nietzsche saw the world as a field of forces, where those who are strongest in spirit, vision, and courage shape their own destiny. He was not necessarily talking about physical strength or moral superiority. He was talking about an inner disposition to create, resist, and transform. Those who possess this will to power do not ask the world for permission. They impose themselves on it. But what does this mean in practice? It means that in a world where many wait for opportunities, some build their own doors. Where many give up in the face of adversity, others see it as fuel. And where many follow rules to fit in, few break them to stand out. This difference in attitude is what separates those who shape reality from those who are shaped by it. It's hard to hear this, but it's liberating, because when you recognize that not everyone has this strength in equal measure, you stop blindly comparing yourself, and you start looking within. How much of your life is being guided by this will to power? How much of you is still waiting for permission? The Stoics, although different from Nietzsche on many points, converge on one essential principle: true strength comes from within. For Epictetus, for example, freedom was the ability to say no to what enslaves the soul. For Seneca, courage was facing misfortune with serenity. The will to power in Stoicism is not directed toward dominating others, but toward dominating oneself. Instead of seeking to control the world, the Stoic learns to control his reactions. Instead of seeking external recognition, he seeks internal coherence. And this requires as much or more strength than leading armies or building empires. Nietzsche spoke of the Übermensch, the beyond man, the one who creates his own values and does not submit to inherited standards. The Stoic, on the other hand, is the one who accepts the facts of life with firmness, but still chooses to live righteously. Both point to the same place, a human being who no longer lives on autopilot, who does not bow to mediocrity, who becomes the author of his own existence. The selection of the strong, therefore, is not made by social status, wealth, or appearance. It happens in the invisible. It happens when you choose the difficult, when you get up, when you would otherwise fall, when you speak the truth, even if it costs you comfort. This strength can be cultivated. It is not innate in everyone to the same degree, but it can be developed with clarity, discipline, and courage. And the first step is to stop looking for strength in others and start finding it within yourself. If this content is making you reflect, leave your like here on the video. This helps me know that I'm on the right path in bringing these deep and off-the-surface reflections. Now that we understand what separates those who win from those who follow, we need to talk about something even more subtle but devastating: the unrealistic expectations that have been imposed on us and that we often carry as if they were absolute truths. That's what we'll talk about in the next chapter. The prison of expectations. Even when we understand that not everyone is destined for visible success, we still carry a heavy baggage: expectations. Not our own expectations, but those of the voices that shaped us: parents, teachers, society, social media. Without realizing it, we begin to measure our worth by standards we never chose. From a young age, we are trained to believe that there is a right path to follow: to study, to have a great career, to get married, to buy a house, to be someone relevant. And if, for some reason, life doesn't follow this script, we feel like we are failing. Even when we don't want the same things, the feeling of inadequacy haunts us like a shadow. This is the most subtle prison of all, the one that lives inside the mind. Nietzsche saw the modern human being as a domesticated creature, trapped by values he did not choose, living by an inherited morality that is often contrary to his own nature. He strongly criticized the tendency to submit to what he called the morality of the weak, where the ideal is to be accepted, obedient and morally correct, even if this stifles creative power and individuality. On the other hand, the Stoics remind us that we cannot control what others expect of us, only how we respond to those expectations. Epictetus said, "It is not the things that disturb us, but the judgment we make of them." Thus, social expectations only have power over us when we accept living under them. How many people are stuck in jobs they hate because they are afraid of disappointing someone? How many stay in tense relationships because they are afraid of what others will think? How many live to meet the aesthetic or financial standards they see in others, even when it hurts their own values? This is the invisible prison that shapes our behaviors, choices, and even our self-esteem. It is as if we are constantly on a stage, playing roles that we never rehearsed, but that were demanded of us. Freeing yourself from this prison requires courage. Courage to say no to what doesn't make sense. Courage to frustrate the expectations of others in the name of personal truth. Courage to redefine success according to your own criteria. And this courage is born when we understand that comparison is a trap. Someone else's success does not invalidate your journey. Someone else's happiness does not define yours. What you see on social media, edited photos, programmed smiles, showcased achievements, is just the showcase, and you are judging yourself behind the scenes. Nietzsche did not believe in bowing to imposed ideals. He proposed the creation of new values, personal, authentic, aligned with the will to power that lives within each person. The Stoics also spoke of this, but with a more practical view. You must act according to reason, virtue, and what is under your control. The rest, fame, status, applause, is irrelevant. Imagine living like this, waking up in the morning without the burden of being someone you are not, making choices based on clarity, not obligation, walking in the direction of your principles, even if it costs you approval. This is the freedom that Stoicism offers. This is the courage that Nietzsche demands. The prison of expectations has no visible bars, but it limits you. It reduces who you are to what others expect you to be. And there is only one way to escape, by taking the risk of being true. Now that you understand how these expectations silently shape the lives of millions, it's time to dig deeper. Because in the midst of all this, there's an entire industry that preys on people's insecurities, an industry that turns this anguish into profit, selling sugar-coated hope in self-help capsules. In the next chapter, we will dismantle this discourse. We will look into the eyes of the lies that tell us, just think positive. The lie of comfortable self-help. We live in an era where hope is sold as a shelf product. Books, videos, courses, and ready-made phrases promise instant transformation. Just believe. You can do anything. The life you want is just a thought away. But it isn't. This kind of comforting self-help provides temporary relief, like a soft blanket on a cold night. But it doesn't really warm us. It just masks the hardness of the ground we're lying on. And the problem isn't wanting to get better. It's thinking that getting better is simple, easy, or guaranteed. Nietzsche rejected any sugar-coated view of existence. For him, life was hard, complex, and often painful. But instead of running away from it, he proposed that we face suffering head-on. Suffering, for Nietzsche, was part of growing up. He said, "That which does not kill me makes me stronger," not as a slogan, but as a philosophy of life. Superficial self-help tries to convince us otherwise. It keeps us from suffering by promising shortcuts. It tells us that if we are suffering, it is because we are not thinking correctly, as if suffering were always a sign of weakness, when often it is the harbinger of transformation. Stoicism also doesn't treat life as a field of flowers. For Stoics, pain, failure, and frustration are part of the good life, because they are moments in which we can practice virtue. Seneca wrote, "No wind blows in favor of those who do not know where they are going, and often those who live chasing empty promises are adrift, seeking relief, not meaning." Self-help marketing that promises effortless success preys on haste and desperation. It doesn't want to empower you. It wants to entertain you. It doesn't want you to face the truth. It wants you to buy into the next illusion. And that's where Nietzsche and the Stoics become a threat to the industry, because they tell you what no one wants to hear. You will suffer, and that's par for the course. They don't promise results, they promise awareness. And with awareness comes responsibility. There's no way to outsource that. If you feel like you've fallen into this cycle of jumping from formula to formula, from motivational video to motivational video, from hope to disappointment, you're not alone. Many people are stuck in this pattern, looking for easy answers to complex questions. But perhaps the real answer isn't a solution, it's a change in perspective. Nietzsche would say that life justifies itself only as a work of art. That is, it doesn't need to be perfect or linear. It needs to be intense, authentic, and deeply one's own. And that requires facing chaos, not trying to escape it, with ready-made mantras. The Stoics, in turn, will say that the good life is one lived according to reason. It is not the easiest, nor the most pleasurable. It is the one most consistent with what you can control and who you choose to be. Suffering on this path is not a mistake. It is a teacher. So the next time you hear someone say that, if you want it, you'll get it, ask yourself, what are the costs? What are the risks? What will I have to give up to achieve this? And, most importantly, is this really what I want, or what they expect me to want? By the way, take the opportunity to comment below. Have you ever felt deceived by promises of easy success? Have you ever believed in formulas that later left you even more frustrated? I want to know how you deal with this. Now, if we can understand how the illusion of self-help creates more anguish than relief, we need to talk about a new proposal: how to live with virtue, firmness, and respect for yourself, even when the world around you is chaotic. In the next chapter, we'll explore how to cultivate virtue in brutal times and why it's the real differentiator for those who live with purpose. Virtue in times of brutality. Life in the modern world demands speed, adaptation, appearance. We are surrounded by silent demands. Be productive, be relevant, be strong, or at least appear to be. It is an age of subtle brutality, where competition is disguised as collaboration and fatigue is sold as ambition. In this scenario, virtue seems to have lost its value. Integrity, patience, self-control, compassion, these are seen as beautiful but impractical qualities. What matters, they say, is the result. The rest is detail. But is that really true? Nietzsche saw the decline of virtue in modernity as part of what he called nihilism, the loss of meaning. When everything becomes an instrument for victory and nothing has value in itself, the human being collapses. He begins to live to appear and not to be, to defeat others and not himself. The Stoics took a completely opposite view. For them, virtue was not a moral adornment, but the very center of the good life. To be virtuous was to be free. It was to live with consistency in the face of chaos, with steadfastness in the face of pain, with kindness in the face of aggression. In times of brutality, whether overt like wars and crises, or disguised like toxic competition and social pressure, virtue is an act of resistance, staying honest when everyone else is lying, being calm when everyone else is shouting, acting justly when the world values opportunism. These attitudes are not weakness, they are rare strengths. Think of someone who stands by their principles, even when no one is watching, someone who chooses not to betray themselves, even when they would have everything to gain by doing so. This person may not be at the top, or may not get applause, but they carry something that many do not have: self-respect. Nietzsche spoke of the beyond man as one who creates his own values, who does not live according to inherited moralism, but rather from an inner creative force. Stoicism, similarly, proposes that the virtuous person lives according to reason, but not just any reason, but a reason guided by nature, by coherence, by a clear conscience. Virtue in this context is choosing what is right, even when it is easier to do what is convenient. It is taking responsibility, even when the mistake could be hidden. It is striving for excellence, even when no one demands it of you. And this kind of conduct is rare, not because it is impossible, but because it requires constant vigilance. Stoicism teaches that virtue does not depend on reward. It is a reward in itself. To be just, prudent, courageous, and moderate is to live in harmony with one's rational nature. It is not a strategy for achieving success. It is a way of living that is successful in the deepest sense of the word. In contrast, the brutality of the modern world often rewards the opposite: haste over reflection, appearance over truth, volume over depth. But this comes at a cost, and this cost, sooner or later, takes its toll in the form of burnout, emptiness, or existential crisis. Virtue is what sustains us when everything else falls apart. It is what gives us the basis to face injustice without becoming unjust, to deal with frustrations without becoming bitter, to overcome fear without becoming cold. And this, although it does not bring fame, gives strength. In times of brutality, virtue is revolutionary. It does not shout, but it is firm. It does not seduce, but it is reliable. It does not need applause, because it is enough in itself. If up until now we have talked about how to break with external illusions and cultivate a coherent life within, now it is time to go a step further. Because there is a type of power that no crisis can take away, a type of strength that does not depend on luck or opportunity. It is the power to govern oneself. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about in the next chapter. True power, self-mastery. The world admires power, brute force, authority, wealth, fame. These are all sold as symbols of success. But the real power, the one that remains when the applause dies down and the crowd leaves, is the power you wield over yourself. Nietzsche spoke of overcoming as destiny, not overcoming others, but overcoming oneself, one's internal limitations, one's fears, one's conditioning. The superior man, according to him, is not the one who dominates the external world, but the one who creates himself with consciousness and intention. The Stoics, centuries before, had already taught this firmly. For them, there is no greater victory than remaining master of one's emotions, even when everything seems to be falling apart. And this is not done by shouting or imposing. It is done through daily practice, with vigilance, with clarity. Self-mastery is not about repressing your emotions. It's about understanding them. It's about knowing that you're angry and still choosing not to act on it. It's about feeling fear and still keeping your footing. It's about being tempted to give up and still keeping going. This silent force is what separates those who react from those who choose. Because the world is full of stimuli, situations that throw us off balance, people who provoke us, challenges that test our equilibrium. And every time you respond to these with intention rather than impulse, you are exercising true power. Inner power doesn't show up in pictures, it doesn't make headlines, but it transforms everything. It changes the way you deal with failure, the way you face criticism, the way you navigate discomfort. And more than that, it frees you from the need to control others, because you already control yourself. Nietzsche saw the common man as someone who follows the herd, who lives under imposed norms, who acts as he is told. The overman is someone who breaks with this, who stands up based on his own principles, who does not need approval to be who he is. Stoicism, in a more serene form, leads in the same direction. The less you depend on the world to feel good, the freer you are. Self-mastery, then, is a practice. It manifests itself in the little things, the moment you choose to listen instead of attack, the moment you hold back an impulsive response, the moment you say no to something that could lead you astray. It is an act of power, not over others, but over your destiny. This is where it all comes together. If you know that visible success is not guaranteed, if you understand that many standards are illusory, and if you choose to live virtuously, then self-mastery becomes the central axis of your journey. It is what keeps you whole when the world tries to tear you apart. And the most interesting thing is that this inner strength does not depend on talent, nor on origin, nor on status. It depends on clarity, training, and choice. Every day, at all times. If you've been following this far, you've already realized that this video isn't about magic formulas. It's about harsh realities and true paths. If this makes sense to you, leave a like here. It shows that there's still room for content that doesn't underestimate your intelligence. In the next chapter, we will explore a topic that still scares many people: failure, but not as an end, but as an essential part of building inner strength. Because sometimes it is by falling that we find solid ground where we can finally get back up. Failure as a path. There is a persistent image that failing is the opposite of winning, that mistakes, falls, and stumbles are signs of incapacity. But this is only true for those who measure life with a short ruler. For those who see failure with philosophical eyes, it is not the end. It is the fire that purifies. Nietzsche said that suffering is necessary. Without it, there is no elevation. Pain was not a punishment, but a process. Whoever runs away from suffering runs away from growth. Whoever rejects failure rejects humanity itself. The Stoics saw it similarly. For them, nothing is essentially good or bad. What matters is not what happens, but how you respond to what happens. Failure, then, is an opportunity in disguise, an invitation to reflect, to adjust course, to strengthen character. The modern world, however, piles up trophies and hides failures. No one posts defeats. No one celebrates failed attempts. But every true path is full of failures. Those who have built something solid, whether internal or external, have fallen many times. And when they fall, they learn. Nietzsche believed that the strong human being is the one who survives chaos and emerges more whole, not because chaos spared him, but because he learned to dance with it. The Stoic, on the other hand, does not seek to escape failure. He seeks to grow from it. With each difficulty he asks, what can I learn? How can I act better? What part of me needs to be polished? Failure, then, is not a humiliation. It is a process of self-discovery. You discover your limits, yes, but you also discover your hidden reserves of strength. You lose what was false, and with luck, find what is true. It's not about romanticizing failure, but about removing it from the pedestal of fear. Because when you face it head-on, you realize that it's part of the journey, not the end of the road, but an inevitable curve in it. Now, as we near the end of this journey, it's time to tie it all together. The hard truth of Nietzsche, the quiet wisdom of Stoicism, the reality of the world, and the inner strength you can cultivate. It all comes down to one choice: keep trying to fit in, or start living authentically. This is what we will see in the last chapter. The choice is in your hands. We have reached the point where everything converges. The illusions that have fallen, the truths that remain, and a decision that only you can make. Life will not give you guarantees. Visible success may never come. The world will continue to be brutal, indifferent, and often unfair, but none of this defines who you will be. Nietzsche shows us that trying to live according to inherited standards is like walking through life like a ghost. He said we need to become who we are, which requires the courage to destroy, reinvent, and recreate. There is no authenticity without rupture. The Stoics, on another path, came to a similar conclusion. Real freedom is living according to the nature of your reason, being guided by principles, not by promises, being moved by virtue, not by a blind desire for acceptance. The point of all that has been said so far is simple but powerful. You can keep trying to fit in with what the world expects, or you can start living truthfully. And that doesn't depend on luck, inheritance, charisma, or talent. It depends on decision. You can choose to stop chasing validation. You can choose to let go of comparisons. You can choose to cultivate your inner strength as if you were caring for something sacred. This choice is not made once. It is made every day, in the silence of your mind, in the moment between impulse and response, in the determination with which you act, even when no one is watching. Nietzsche would say that living is creating. The Stoic would say that living is aligning reason and action. Both would agree on one thing: a dignified life is not given, it is constructed. And this construction begins when you take responsibility for your own path. Now, with all this in mind, there's only one question left. Will you continue trying to please the world, or will you start becoming someone that even the world can't ignore because you're whole inside? Nietzsche, Stoicism, and the path of the inner warrior. The world will continue to sell dreams packaged in formulas. It will continue to exalt the same icons of success, the same unattainable standards, the same recycled promises. But now you have seen behind the scenes. You have understood that the true value of a life is not in what is displayed, but in what is sustained. Nietzsche did not come to comfort us. He came to awaken us, to show us that suffering is part of existence, that greatness is for those who dare to create their own paths, even when it means walking alone. The Stoics, in turn, give us tools, discipline, clarity, a daily call to reason and virtue, even when the world around us chooses the easy way out. There is a common ground between these two. Philosophies, the courage to live authentically, to stop hiding behind masks, to abandon the role of victim, to accept life as it is, and yet live with determination, with purpose, with peace. You don't need a stage, you need presence. You don't need to conquer the world, you need to conquer yourself. And that, my friend, is within your reach every day. If this message spoke to you, if it made you really think, consider subscribing to the channel right now. This helps me to continue bringing you in-depth content, without filters, without shortcuts, just the raw and at the same time transformative truth. Choosing the path of consciousness is not easy, but it is the only one where victory has real value. See you in the next video. Until then, stay strong, inside and out.